our February 25th, 2021 Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Committee Public Forum. This is going to be another public hearing, our second public hearing, where we are going to briefly address the background and sort of the topic areas that we are addressing as a committee for our suggestions locally, as well as beyond, meaning county and state, and then address some of the areas that there was question or concern or issues about that we went back and tried to rectify or fix. So with that said, Carrie, I think it may just be helpful that you pull up on the screen the program. Thank you very much. Let us move, please, to the second slide, Carrie. So this is something that was discussed before, but I just want to readdress it. On June 12, 2020, Governor Andrew Cuomo signed New York State Executive Order 203, requiring local governments in New York State to adopt a policing reform plan by April 10th of this year. And in response to comply with that executive order, the following steps have been taken here in the town of Newcastle. Next, please. In the town of Newcastle, our work on police reform began prior to the governor's executive order, and we are fortunate in launching our PRRCC to be able to build on a foundation of activities that started in summer of 2020 with the creation of the Newcastle Council on Race and Equity, also as people know it as a CRE. The CRE was formed in the aftermath of the police-involved murder of George Floyd, and also in response to a series of racist incidents in our community. The CRE created an action plan to increase racial justice and equity in Newcastle by looking across all aspects of civil life and institutions, including policing. The work of the CRE to develop recommendations to improve community policing, community police interactions was a launch pad for the PRRCC, and several CRE volunteers continued their service with this committee. In addition, the Newcastle Town Board held a community forum with Police Chief James Carroll to review police policies and procedures and to engage residents in June of last year. On Tuesday, October 20th of 2020, the Town Board approved a resolution creating the Newcastle Police Reform Reinvention Collaborative Committee, again, the PRRCC, appointing 12 members, and ultimately we expanded that committee on Tuesday, November 17th of last year by appointing 7 additional members. Can I have the next slide, please? I will actually just very quickly mention all the people who are members. I didn't do so, and that was not fair, actually. Committee members, Jeremy Salan, Chief James Carroll, Jill Simon Shapiro, Ivy Poole, Robert Deary, Christine Ackerman, Anthony Rotolo, Hermione Charles, Martha Jacobs, Frank Lewis, Vince Canziani, Harvey Loeb, Craig Davenport, Joanna Robinson Nair, Angela Broner-Helm, Kimberly Carey, Brissel Welsh, Carlos Ramirez, and Dara Nair. And across the spectrum of these people, we have some people in law enforcement, local police, we have legal aid, social workers, the school district, vast different types of people, ethnic, gender, and age backgrounds as well. Thanks. We're going to have the next, please. There's a timeline of the many events that we've had in our workshops and work group. You can see that the 25th is our second to last, or if not our last, forum. And then ultimately, it's going to go before the town board on March 2nd. Next, please. So initially, which was the big picture, we looked at a few recommendations. First was mental health, discussing and creating the Office of a Community Advocate, a Chiefs Advisory Board to create that as well, having community surveys. We addressed the role of the town board, how we would and the benefit of tracking demographics on traffic stops, posting key department policies on our website so that information is easily accessible and transparent. And then in addition to this, sort of the natural outflow is as we looked at things locally, which what we were tasked to do, we saw that there was things that maybe we couldn't do here, or we wanted to partner with, or needed leadership or guidance or monies from above, but recommendations and policies that we thought we would share with both the county and the state. Next, please. So again, instead of going through everything that we went through before, but certainly we can pull it up if people do have questions. One of the main topic areas that the committee really stood behind was creating an office of the community advocate. And there was some confusion at first about how they would deal with that position, or people in that role would deal with those community members who made complaints anonymously, and how we can more effectively deal with the complaint as well as a response to the same. So the recommendation in our recommendation statement is the establishment of the Office of the Community Advocate to create a more effective avenue to lodge an anonymous complaint. The Newcastle PRRCC acknowledges that the current system for reporting anonymous complaints is problematic in that it allows a complainant to maintain anonymity when lodging a complaint, but fails to provide an avenue to allow the complainant follow-up and closure. The current system is problematic for the police as well, in that it does not allow for follow-up by the police in order to conduct an effective and thorough investigation. That is, key material information is missing, so the investigation stalls. In order to provide a more effective avenue to lodge an anonymous complaint, the town of Newcastle will create an independent office of the community advocate. So to be clear, and one of the issues that we dealt with before, the right to come forward anonymously is not being stripped. This role will help try to advocate for those people. And eventually we hope that there will be that trust and that level of working together, so that whatever an issue is that is raised, a complaint is thoroughly investigated and the outcome is an appropriate one for both the person in the police department as well as the person in the community. Can I have the next slide, please? So as I mentioned before, there are many issues that we need partnership and ideas that need to come from above, or pardon me, ideas that need to start and be implemented from above, but we thought would be something that's important to be discussed. So one of our recommendations to the county was the creation of a 211 mental health resource and increasing the availability of mental health pods throughout Westchester County. We strongly advocate for the creation of a 211 system to provide a centralized resource for the residents of Westchester County for mental health related questions and issues. This number would provide access to information, services available, and assistance to family, friends, and individuals experiencing mental health issues. Ideally, what would this be? So the 211 resource would work in conjunction with mental health pods, and pods being basically assets of people who are skilled in mental health area, whether they be social workers, psychologists, and other arenas, that would be accessible to the public in times of need, and not just, for example, being a call on the phone to the state or the county, but more people on the ground. So the county has created mental health pods in some municipalities. One, to provide mental health professionals to respond with police on inappropriate 911 calls, provide mental health resources to the community, and help divert mental health incidents away from the police. So the point being is not, while the police may have to respond, that there's some issues that eventually may be best dealt with or as soon as possible dealt with the mental health provider as opposed to law enforcement. But accessibility is critical, because if those people are not available or local to some extent, or too far away, even if they're relatively local, Newcastle, for example, is a large municipality from East End to West End, that there be a means to make sure that they are here. Next, please. Mental health pods should be employed throughout the county with centralized locations to allow for effective dispatch to appropriate situations to assist local police when callers identify the emergency as having mental health issues. Much like ALS services dispatched by proximity to a call, mental health pods would be dispatched to calls where needed. We recognize the increasing need for mental health professionals to be the first point of contact with the police on many 911 calls. We further recognize that despite additional training available to the police in de-escalation and other tactics to address mental health issues that they encounter, police officers are not, with few exceptions, mental health professionals. And that is not in any way an attack on the police. It's just a practical reality. We believe creating in the 211 system coupled with the increased availability of mental health pods throughout the county, will go a long way in properly addressing mental health issues routinely encountered by the police. In other words, this will just be a asset that can work along with the police when necessary, and at times maybe even move the police over and let them take control when reasoned and necessary. Extend the period of probation. We join the county in its recommendation to extend the period of probation for new officers. In other words, this probationary period allows for a longer period of oversight for the officers that are hired in particular municipalities such as ours. Next slide, please. Body cams. Again, to the county and state. We as a committee would support funding to enable our police officers to have body cams. We would be looking for funding to cover the cost of the cameras, but also to serve to store the information gathered and softwares to catalog and access it. It's only so good if it's not saved and preserved, and there's a means to actually review the material, the content that's there. Once we obtain the funding to provide body cameras to officers, we would promulgate rules for the appropriate use of the cameras or cams by our officers, when, if ever, it's appropriate to turn them on and off. So a policy would have to be in place so there's consistency across the board. Next, please. Additional recommendations, education. In addition to the recommendation to extend the period of probation for new officers, and again, that's a period of time that there's oversight by the chief or other people in the department who can ultimately decide to terminate that officer or keep him on or her on. It is recommended that the curriculum at the police academy be expanded. We strongly urge the Division of Criminal Justice Services to retain a curriculum specialist to recommend adequate training for additional subjects and the appropriate training time for each of these subjects. This additional coursework would include, but wouldn't be limited to, recognizing and appropriately addressing mental health issues, cultural sensitivity, recognizing bias, and procedural justice. All relevant issues, not just here in Newcastle, but anywhere for that matter in the county, state, and beyond. We further recommend that these subjects be incorporated into ongoing annual training, recognizing that it is an ongoing learning process. We don't want just one course, then it's over, and then as time goes on, you forget what you learned, and many of these areas are constantly evolving as well. Last, we understand that these requests and recommendations have a real financial impact to the local municipalities that bear the cost of both the training at the police academy and the additional field training days ongoing annual training will require. We will be looking to the county and state for increased funding to make these recommendations a reality. Again, we need partnership. We can't carry this weight all on our own, just like other municipalities can't either. Next, please. It looks like our next is the last slide. So again, I've touched on the issues that we broke out further after our own internal conversations, as well as comment from people in the community. And I now open the floor to anyone who wants to share their thoughts. There's nothing right or wrong. You can certainly share your ideas, and we'll listen to them and take them all into consideration. So I think we do have a hand. Chase Tyler, Carrie.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Everyone can hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. So in terms of, so first of all, mental health pods, that's a step in the right direction. I fully support it. It's a really good idea. In terms of education for the cops, though, I remember last time I recommended a 4-year bachelor's degree being sort of just mandatory to get into the academy. What was everybody's thoughts on that? Because I noticed it wasn't present in the most recent version, you know?
So I'll start, but I encourage anyone who wants to raise their digital hand or just speak out. But one of the concerns that we had is there's many things beyond an education that impacts someone being not just an adequate, but a good police officer. There's life experience. There's cultural and ethnic backgrounds and experience in dealing with people from different places. There's military experience. There's training that you can receive in other areas. So solely dictating that an academic 4-year college is the sort of the baseline that would require to be a police officer ignores many other traits and characteristics that arguably are more valuable than an A in or a B in art history, and I use that as a history major, not to mock a history major, but there are other valuable skills that aren't taught in a classroom.
So a criminal justice degree, that wouldn't be a good idea, like, at all?
Well, I don't think anyone is saying that. I think our committee is saying that it shouldn't be a requirement that you must have that 4-year degree. I would tend to think, and I'm not the chief of police, although remind everyone that the town board sits in a position as sort of police commissioners to ultimately decide who gets hired. But when you look at who would be the best person for a police officer job, you would likely, if not certainly, take that into consideration among other factors, that background and experience and education.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Thank
Also,
you.
the 2-on-1 thing, I absolutely support that. Absolutely, 2-on-1 is a very good idea. I hope it, succeeds.
Super. Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. Anyone else from the public? I mean, this could be fairly short, or we can certainly, we have the time to make it long. So anyone else want to share their thoughts or ideas or comments?
Anyone who's interested, you can raise your digital hand or you can type into the chat box. I think there's one person on the phone. If you dial *9, that will raise your digital hand.
And even if there's not any questions, I'm hesitant to just shut us down at 6:20, just right after we started. I want a few minutes in case people come rolling in. So if there's anything, any of the board members, any comments that you want to share or thoughts, please by all means do so.
Hi, it's Kim. Actually, as you know, I wasn't here. I wasn't able to make last week's board meeting, but I just following up with the education issue that was brought up. While it was recommended a 4-year degree, I understand that that may not be practical in general. I mean, these people are going to be going on to the police academy as well. However, I was just hoping that something similar to or the equivalent of an associate's degree would go into play. And I think that all of those past experiences, as I think I emailed everybody, could certainly be some type of credit against the education, because it's definitely relevant and definitely valuable. And also, I think, at very least a 2-year degree is much more attainable. So it's just something I would like the board to continue to consider. And I'm sorry if I'm bringing this out of the left field, but I just didn't have the opportunity to discuss it with all of you last week.
So Kim, if I may answer that, we had a variety of suggestions last week. I personally suggested a 3-year program, which would be the equivalent of like a 2-year degree plus an extension of the police academy. We had every suggestion from a 2-year degree to a 4-year degree. Ultimately, we decided that, the best thing would be to hire a curriculum expert to say, these are the core things that's needed. More courses in psychology, more courses in different areas, and ultimately let that group, with the blessing of the Chiefs Advisory Committee and the town board, decide on the appropriate length, whether it be 2 years or 3 years or 4 years.
That sounds a little bit more fuller than what I saw in the summary. So thank you, Hermione.
Yeah, thank you, Hermione. And yeah, obviously the summary is just that, it's a summary, but thank you for the question, Kim. We have a hand up, Carrie. Alon Tyler, please.
Oops, sorry, I had to unmute myself. I guess I was surprised, quite honestly. I'm new to this process, and I had just quite honestly assumed that a 4-year degree was required. It just seems to me odd thinking that somebody graduates from high school and can join the police force. So I guess my real question is, what is the sort of experience or the standard? Maybe this is a question for the chief, but are most police officers coming out of college, or are most coming straight out of high school? I'm just curious as to what the real world experience is in terms of the actual police officers.
Chief,
Thank you for your question. Currently, it's a civil service requirement, and in Westchester County, there is no only requirement to have a high school education. They cannot be appointed to a police officer prior to 20, and they can't be outside of the academy prior to turning 21.
Okay. But I guess I hear all of that. And is that young a police officer the sort of norm? Or do you find that most are coming either after college or after military service or some other career?
I've only known of one that's come in at 21. So it's very, very, very rare. It's more, I'd say closer to mid 20s, or it used to be anyway. And, life experience, military, some college, I've given it. We do have officers that have anywhere from a high school education to master's degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Carrie, Scott Morrison, please.
Hi there, it's Scott Morrison. I apologize if this question has been asked already because I missed about 2 minutes, but I think the leveraging of the 211 system for mental health is terrific. I was just wondering if you'd consider expanding the recommendation to the 211 system across all of New York State as opposed to just Westchester.
I would certainly think the more that you can include, the better. But again, that's an issue for above us, but I don't see personally why that would be a bad thing. If anything, it would be a good thing.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Another hand, Nicole, please.
Can you hear me now? Nicole Richey calling. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that the issue of education was brought up again. And if in your discussions, if you thought that a 4-year degree or an associate's degree was not necessarily a requirement, I was glad to hear Ms. Charles talk about a curriculum advisor, at least, about recommending certain courses, especially in psychology, sociology, etc. And I understand that people may apply and go to the academy who have prior life experience, military experience, etc. But in my opinion, it's a little bit like saying, well, there are some people who are born teachers and are excellent teachers, but they have no degree. In order to get a degree, in order to get a employment as a teacher, you have to have a master's degree, as well as specific training and drug abuse, child abuse, etc. So I don't think that saying life experience is necessarily enough. And I said this last time, but I taught for 10 years in a law enforcement academy of high school seniors. And I would say that those who went on to the police academy, even at age 21, were not prepared for that. And that's it.
I think that's fair. And that's one of the reasons that we agree that there needs to be more and continued education. So thank you, Nicole.
Jeremy?
Yes,
may
please.
I press the gentleman who spoke prior to Nicole?
Please.
He suggested that the 211 concepts be rolled out statewide. I do want to remind everyone on this call that this is a state mandate. We are making recommendations for our town, but it is going to the governor's committee. And if they deem that something is fit for the state, it's quite possible that it will be rolled out statewide. I also want to mention that I am in contact with other people working in other areas. Please excuse me. And that is something that was widely recommended.
Thank you, Armin. Any other questions from people in the public? Any other comments from members of the committee?
I'll make one fun comment. I just wanted to wish Kim Carey a happy birthday today. She's mentioned on past calls that today was going to be her birthday. So thanks for joining us, Kim.
That wasn't for recognition. It was simply to have the meeting moved.
That part didn't
Thank
work.
you.
So.
Always
I
fun to
know.
have a reason to celebrate.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the stakeholders and in their participation. It was a lot of work, and I'm proud of the work that we did, and you know, and I thank them for their efforts and their challenges, and I think we all learned a lot from this experience. So thank you all.
Absolutely, and Tiffany and Carrie, you know, really sort of were the wheels in motion that made this all happen, and Jill as well. So thank you, the three of you.
So can we talk about next steps?
No, there's a gentleman just.
Oh, I'm sorry.
With Mr. Tyler again, please.
Unmute.
I'm sorry, I was going to point out that not only is today Kim's birthday, but I happen to know that she is joining us from a hospital room.
Happy birthday, Mom.
I think that's true dedication to this cause.
You've been outed.
Can you tell somehow we're from the same household?
Also, are you still on that?
I don't know.
I sure hope there's a really special gift waiting for her.
Dad, did you scan this to Mom?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Sorry.
Well, I don't know if we're going to
Tell her
sing.
I had to step away to start cooking dinner.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So with that birthday welcome, we have also Haley Ferraro, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for all your hard work on all of this. I've been listening and watching over the past few months. I'm wondering if now that the Westchester County Police have put out their recommendations, I haven't read thoroughly through them, if that changes anything that you are thinking about implementing.
I think that this is something, I think, well, I'll speak for myself. I think that we're comfortable with the things we're advocating for locally. And for that matter, just keep in mind, Haley, that as I understand it, these are recommendations. We're not wedded to this, meaning we could have more as we decide as things go forward. And ultimately, the town board, if there's going to implement a different system or different rules, whatever we can do, if we see a need for it, we certainly can do it. So it's constantly, it's alive, if you will.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and Haley, if I could add, this is a review of the Newcastle Police Department, but we did even expand to state and countywide recommendations. And some of the work done by the county is going to filter down, their decisions will filter down to help us out as well.
Correct.
Yeah, I think
Is there
a couple
anything
of
that
the
you saw?
areas that there were specifically overlap in were with regard to the mental health sort of resources, and also with regard to making changes to the training academy to provide additional training to police officers, particularly around sort of diversity and inclusion.
Right. Those were the two areas that I saw as the biggest overlap as well.
And if there's things that are missing, or you see things over time that should be here, you should please feel free to reach out and share that with us.
Yeah, and my door is always open, or for a phone call or a meeting.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So seeing no other hands or people trying to hop on.
So can we just talk about next steps?
Please.
Okay. So since the committee seems to be comfortable with the recommendations that we captured in the revisions that we reviewed tonight, Tiffany and I will take and fold those into the original document, the larger document, updated, and it's going to be presented to the board for acceptance, approval of the recommendations next Tuesday, March 3rd. And then pending the board's approval, but we'll have another presentation then if the group is available, or any or all of you would like to attend. And then we'll submit it up to the powers that be.
That's a good question about that. I probably should know the answer, but I don't. When we submit this, are we then waiting to get approval in order for us to move forward with this, or we're submitting and it's sort of like, here's just to let you know, here's what we've recommended and we're moving forward with.
Yeah, it's my understanding that we don't need approval from anybody else, that the town board will accept or reject the recommendations as they see fit. I'm sure in light of the amount of work that was done, that, you know, the board will be as impressed as we all have been with the amount of work generated from this committee. As far, we do want to submit it to the state and the county, because there are components of our recommendations that depend upon their buy-in and assistance in order for us to be able to implement the funding for the body cams.
Right.
You know, for one, the mental health, you know, pods in the 211 system, that at a minimum for Westchester County and for the whole state, that, I mean, ideally it would be great if it was a countrywide thing, that, you know, the same way with 911, you have a mental health emergency anywhere in the country, you call 211. This is just a, you know, it's the number that we're all familiar with going forward. But anyway, that's my understanding.
Thank you, Ivy. I actually appreciate your having asked that question, because that was my question as well, is what's the next step then once the board, you know, affirms this or votes on it, then what? So thank you for that.
Is it possible that, let's say the board just says, could you, you know, we like this, but we're sending this back to us to, again, is that part of the process?
Tune in next Tuesday and find out. No.
I mean, could that happen? I mean,
it seems unlikely. I'm optimistic. I think so. I think the board will.
No, I'm just wondering, because that would sort of mean that this would be the last meeting of us. Is it? I don't know. I didn't know that.
Do you have anything you want to say? Like anything personal?
You know, it's
like should you talk to
back, right? So no.
Talk to Reverend Jacobs first before you say anything.
I think it'd be helpful for all at the town board meeting or the work session. So I would say that would be our last meeting.
Right, next Tuesday. So
well, is it Tuesday? Because you mentioned Tuesday, March 3rd. March 3rd is actually
March 2nd.
Wednesday. So it's the
March
2nd.
2nd.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just wanted to clarify.
I flipped the numbers in my head. The 3 and the 2.
I do it all the time. Okay, great.
What time is that meeting?
It's the meeting actually starts earlier. We're going to be on at 7 is actually what Carrie has called it for. It's been in our little schedule of events for a couple weeks now. So
okay,
we will send out another reminder, but it's actually in the PowerPoint presentations that we've been working with on the schedule for next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so are we all set then?
I just have a question. I'm gonna, it's Joanna. I'm driving, so I'm just speaking in from my car. I just wanted to find out what the results on the survey were, because it's kind of interesting that no one else except for me keeps asking about the data, especially if it was one of the requirements from the governor's office for the reform committee. I don't understand why I have to keep on pressuring to ask what the data results were and if it was
I'm
read.
happy to circulate it to the group. It was my understanding that the Chiefs Advisory Board was going to take a look at the data and use it to go forward. I'm happy to circulate it to the group. There are.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that we discussed it at one meeting and realized that we would not have the results in a timely enough fashion in order to include anything in the current recommendations, but that would not mean that we could not make recommendations out of that as we move forward. So that's why I haven't asked about it. So, but Joanna, thank you for keeping it.
Yeah, it only closed last week.
Minds.
Late last week. was the last day for people to sign on to it.
And it was not a requirement of the governor's order.
Yeah, it was
a
not.
decision we made to do it.
Yeah. So it's fine. We haven't synthesized anything. I'm happy to take and circulate it to the group. And
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. Yeah.
Can you give us an idea of about how many people responded?
285.
Okay. Out of how many were you hoping for? Were we hoping for, excuse me?
Well, we have 6,700 parcels. We have between 17 and 18,000 people, but some of them are children, so I didn't expect all of them to respond. It was not an overwhelming response.
That's disappointing.
You know, it happens.
But and I don't know. I mean, it's the first survey that
time.
we've done around this, and you know, and hopefully future ones will be more engaged. People will be more engaged in future
Yeah, what's
ones that
interesting
are-
is 285 people took the survey, but almost double that opened it. So I don't know if people opened it and
It's too long.
yeah, it did have a high completion rate. That's true, but an awful lot of people opened it. So the good news is that people who started it finished it. So that's great because our survey was a little bit longer than others. You know.
Well, and back to the point that Christine was making with regard to, you know, the value of having a professional to assist us with the surveys going forward as we move forward with that recommendation. You know, having somebody who is also sort of experienced in developing the right kind of language to market and encourage folks to respond to the survey, I think will be really helpful. It's a good lesson learned.
I think also the timing, you know, we're a little delayed. We're quite a bit delayed. And, you know, had this been, you know, as far as getting the survey out, we had expected to get the survey out earlier. And it's, I don't want to say anticlimactic. It's not anticlimactic, but we're just coming off of, you know, the holiday season and all of that. And people are starting to settle down a little bit. And, you know, I think just jumping back into it might have been a little bit difficult for some people. So
we'll do better next time.
Yeah, I think.
But we will have these results, and you know, as they are, and they're great. I'll circulate it to the group. It certainly wasn't anyone's intention to, you know, withhold information.
I mean, maybe what we could do is, I know we're wrapping up, and some people are excited to wrap up, but maybe if there is a group of people who would be interested in kind of getting together and digging into some of the results of the survey, I'd certainly be interested in just kind of paging through it with somebody and thinking about, you know, both how we might communicate the results of the survey back to the community, but also how we can leverage it going forward. Maybe we can just kind of have a little subgroup, maybe.
Are you volunteering for the Chiefs Advisory Board?
I'm volunteering.
I think that's what I'm hearing.
I will.
I'm free and Ivy. I'd be interested.
Great.
Sure.
Definitely.
Okay.
All right. I don't want to be accused of pushing us out. All right. I think seeing no hands objecting, though, I think we'll wrap up for tonight, and we'll see everyone soon for our next date in March. Our last date in March.
Right, March 2nd, 7 o'clock. Be there, be square. We'll send out invites. Okay?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Join us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Kim.
Yes, happy birthday, Kim. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Hi there. So